I graded the Baltimore Ravens 2023 draft class 2 years later. I recently graded the 2024 draft class, and a lot of you guys wanted to make this a series and to do the other draft classes, so that's exactly what we're doing. Now, this 2023 draft class for the Ravens is a bit different than the other ones because there were only 6 picks. That is pretty low for the Ravens. They usually max out comp picks and hold on to all their draft picks to have more than the usual 7. But in this draft class, they only had 6. The main reason for that is the Roquan Smith trade, where the Ravens gave up a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. So they did not end up with a 2nd-round pick at all in this 2023 draft class. But let's dive into these 2023 draft grades 2 years later. In the first round of the 2023 draft, the Baltimore Ravens selected wide receiver Zay Flowers from Boston College at pick 22. Zay was a highly touted wide receiver from Boston College, known for quickness and route running and his ability to separate. And over these last 2 years, Zay Flowers has become a very important part to this Ravens offense. He finished his rookie season with over 800 yards, and then he passed the 1,000-yard mark last year and was voted into his first Pro Bowl, the first Pro Bowl for a wide receiver in Baltimore Ravens history that they drafted. And the Ravens are using Zay Flowers all over the field. He's a very versatile player, and I really think his career is just getting started. Entering year 3, I think Zay Flowers is going to continue to shock a lot of people and prove himself as an elite playmaker in this league year after year. This was a great draft pick by the Ravens, probably the best wide receiver that the Ravens have ever drafted. And the Ravens were fortunate that Zay was still there because Quentin Johnson went the pick before Zay Flowers. Jackson Smith-Njigba went a couple picks before that. So Zay was not the first receiver taken off the board, even though he probably should have been. Maybe you could argue Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, Jordan Addison went after Zay, Rashee Rice in the 2nd round. But Zay Flowers was a standout receiver from this draft class, and the Ravens are lucky to have got him. So I'm going to give this draft pick an A. I said in the last one, I'm not giving out any A pluses until multiple years have passed and this guy has cemented his legacy, and then we could go back and say A plus. But Zay Flowers could end up being an A plus, just like I said last draft about Nate Wiggins. So I think Zay Flowers is a great pick. We couldn't have really done better at receiver at that spot, and I think it's the best wide receiver the Ravens have ever drafted, and therefore I'm going to give this draft pick an A. There is no 2nd-round pick. Like I said earlier, we traded that to Chicago for Roquan Smith. So moving on to the 3rd round at pick 86, the Baltimore Ravens selected linebacker Trenton Simpson from Clemson. Trenton Simpson's a explosive, fast linebacker, versatile linebacker who was brought in here to kind of replace Patrick Queen. When Trenton Simpson first was drafted in 2023, we still had Patrick Queen and had just traded for Roquan Smith, so definitely not a lot of playing time for him there. But then Patrick Queen moves on to the Steelers last year, and Trenton Simpson gets his chance to start next to Roquan, and it didn't quite pan out that way. He got a lot of opportunity earlier in the season, and then as the season went on, he was replaced by Chris Board and Malik Harrison and was playing a lot less, basically just playing special teams. So Trenton Simpson definitely still has a little bit of ways to go. I think all the tools are there athletically, but he's got to get that game experience and get his mind sharp so he's not thinking so much out there. So I think Trenton Simpson still has a ton of potential and has flashed multiple times, has really been fast and physical to the ball. He's made a few plays in the regular season, has been a standout in preseason before. I think Trenton Simpson is going to improve this draft grade as time goes on, but as it stands right now, just because he really couldn't be relied on as a starter in his 2nd year when we gave him a chance, and drafting a guy in the 3rd round is a decent investment. So I'm going to give this draft pick a C for now. I definitely think that Trenton Simpson could end up raising this drastically. If he ends up becoming the player that I know he can become and ends up being a full-time starter at linebacker for the Ravens for a couple more years, then we'll definitely raise this letter grade as we do this again next year. But as it stands right now, when Trenton Simpson got his shot last year, it didn't work out. And I was surprised myself. I thought Trenton Simpson, I didn't think he would jump in and be Patrick Queen right away, but I did think Trenton Simpson was going to be the Ravens starter next to Roquan at linebacker, and he just couldn't hold down that job. So we'll see how this year goes. I think Trenton Simpson's going to get another big opportunity to be that guy. So hopefully Trenton Simpson takes a leap and learns from his mistakes from last year and ends up becoming that guy, and will raise his draft grade up. But for now, it's a C. Moving on to the 4th round at pick 124, the Baltimore Ravens drafted outside linebacker / edge Tavius Robinson from Ole Miss. Tavius was brought in for his pass rushing potential and raw athleticism, his size, his ability to set the edge. Being a 4th round pick, you're already kind of in that developmental edge rusher category. No one really expects you to come in your rookie year and be a full-time starter who's thriving. But Tavius Robinson has done very, very well. This is a great 4th round pick. He's earning more and more playing time. He had 1 sack his rookie year. He had 3.5 sacks last year. And I think Tavius Robinson's role is going to continue to expand. So for a 4th round pick, he immediately was finding more playing time than most. And then last year earned even more playing time, did an incredible job at setting the edge. I think Tavius Robinson is going to be a piece for the Ravens moving forward. His strength and size have really made him a solid rotational piece on this Ravens defensive front. And he has a ton of room to grow still. He's still very young. So I think heading into his 3rd season this year, I'm expecting a lot of good things for Tavius Robinson. I think his playing time will go up substantially. And therefore, this ended up being a really good 4th round pick. So I'm going to give this draft pick a B+. I think Tavius Robinson has already proven that he's worth a 4th round pick. I mean, honestly, he's probably worth like a 2nd round pick. He's played really well and is just getting started. I think this is definitely one of those pass rushers that, you know, in his contract year, he's going to have like a career season and have like 10 sacks or something. But right now, I think his stats will just continue to increase. His playing time will continue to increase. And I'm expecting big things this year from Tavius Robinson. Moving on to round 5 at pick 157, the Ravens drafted cornerback Kyu Blu Kelly out of Stanford. This was probably one of the worst Ravens draft picks in a while. I mean, I know a 5th round pick, those later picks are obviously gambles, but not too often do the Ravens draft a guy in the 5th round and then that player not even be on the team by the start of the season. Kyu Blu Kelly was drafted to add some depth to the cornerback room. You know, he had some athleticism, some ball skills, but he just struggled transitioning to the NFL in general. He was cut by the Ravens and then hopped around to a few other teams after that, so he has just not been able to cement his foot in the NFL and find a role at all. And this isn't an uncommon thing. There's a lot of later draft picks in the NFL that don't pan out at all. I think I was just so surprised, and I'm going to be harsh on this pick because it was a 5th round pick that didn't even make that year's roster. You know, you didn't even keep him around on the practice squad to give him a chance. You just cut him right away. And then he ended up getting cut by multiple other teams. So it obviously was just not a great draft pick at all. And for that reason, I am going to give this draft pick an F grade. I just don't see anything positive out of this. You know, I know it's a later pick. I'm easier on the later picks because it's very hard to find key guys or starters or even rotational guys later in the draft. But for your 5th round pick to not even make the team or the practice squad the year you drafted him, it was obviously a bad pick. Moving on to the 6th round at pick 199, the Ravens took offensive lineman Sala from Oregon. Sala was brought in as a developmental offensive lineman or offensive line depth. We saw a little bit of him in the preseason, never really flashed, never really earned any meaningful playing time with the Ravens, was hanging around on the practice squad for a few seasons, but now has moved on and is no longer on our team. He's got the size and physical tools, but he's just been very inconsistent, has struggled in pass protection, and that's really just prevented him from getting much playing time at all. So we'll see if Sala ends up getting playing time elsewhere and earning a spot onto an active roster, but he's no longer with the Ravens. So I'm going to give this draft pick a D-. I'm not going to give it an F like I did Kyu Blu Kelly. F's are for extreme scenarios, like Kyu didn't even make the team. But Sala was on our team for 2 years, hung around on the practice squad, but just never ended up developing into what they thought he would, and therefore that 6th round pick ended up kind of being a waste, but I get it. these late draft picks, you're taking shots at a dartboard hoping to hit a bullseye. They just miss with this one, so I'm giving it a D-. And then the last Ravens draft pick in 2023 was in the 7th round, pick 229. Guard Andrew Vorhees from USC. This was a really interesting pick because Vorhees was projected to go 2nd, 3rd round. Some had him in the 1st round in that draft, but he tore his ACL at the combine. He's known for crushing the bench press at the combine with the torn ACL. So he ended up redshirting his rookie season because of that ACL injury, and we didn't see any of Andrew Vorhees until this year that just passed. He ended up getting a chance to start at left guard. He played all right, definitely inconsistent, but he's very young. I mean, those were his first few games in the NFL. Ended up getting hurt and got replaced by Patrick McCary and then never started again. But we did see some of Vorhees. We saw some in week 18, and we got some starting reps earlier in the season. We also saw him in the preseason. So there is a little bit of tape out there for Vorhees, and the tape definitely won't blow you away, but there's potential there. And Vorhees was coming off that ACL injury, and that was his first time ever playing in the NFL. So it's tough to say that what we saw last year is who Andrew Vorhees is as a player. That's definitely not his peak level. He's going to get better year after year. He's very young and is just now kind of getting that game experience and is an asset to this offensive line. I mean, as it stands right now, he's plugged in to be the Ravens' starting left guard this season. I don't know if I love that. I definitely want to add more competition to that guard room, but as we stand here today, Andrew Vorhees is probably going to be the starting left guard for the Ravens. So to get a guy like that in the 7th round is a great pick. You know, I know he had to redshirt a year, you had to wait, and then last year you didn't get quite the production that you wanted out of him. But even if he ends up being a depth piece on the offensive line, to get a guy like that in the 7th round makes this a good pick. So I think this grade still has a lot of time to fluctuate up or down depending on how it pans out. But as we stand right now, I'm going to give this draft pick a B+. Anytime you draft a starting caliber guard or at least close to it in the 7th round, that's great value. So it's definitely hard to trash this pick. I think this pick is a great pick for where we got him. We'll see how it ends up playing out. If he ends up being the Ravens starter at guard and gets better and better and better, this pick could move up to an A. You know, to find a guy like that in the 7th round is crazy. But if he ends up not starting and kind of is just a backup and struggles again, then, you know, we may move this pick down a little bit. But I think either way, finding value like this in the 7th round is always a good thing. So B+ for Andrew Vorhees. And that rounds out the Ravens 2023 draft grades 2 years later. I definitely want to keep doing these as the years pass, and also I'm going to go back and do 2022, 2021, and just make this a series. I started a playlist on the channel to keep all these organized in case you missed the last one. You could go back and watch these. Please drop your draft grades in the comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just our opinions, you know. We don't know how this all plays out. These guys are still very young in their careers, but I definitely think it's cool to go back and look at these drafts and see how they have panned out year by year. So I appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. The Flock Rundown. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.